Election night delivered on the anticipated drama with upsets, historic wins, and still undecided races across the country. We'll take a look at the biggest night in politics. Plus, more than 30 LGBTQ candidates were on the ballot this November, and there were some major wins. We'll look at the victories in congressional and gubernatorial races. And a round of election night firsts for BIPOC candidates. Our election recap is up next on Advocate Today. Hi, welcome to Advocate Today. I'm Tracy E. Gilchrist. Even with all the votes in, it might be another month before we know who controls Congress. The Senate race in Georgia is headed to a runoff. To win the Senate, Democrats or Republicans would need to win in Arizona and Nevada if they don't win in Georgia. But today, many campaigns are celebrating. LGBTQ and BIPOC candidates ran in record numbers and were among the biggest winners of the night. I spoke to Advocate.com's senior national reporter Christopher Wiggins about these newly elected officials and the results from around the country. Hi, Christopher Wiggins, senior national reporter for The Advocate. Thank you for joining me. It was a big election night.
Hi.
Yes, good to see you. It was a big election night with the midterms, and I would love to start first by asking you about what the big win was in Massachusetts last night.
Well, so Maura Healey became the first lesbian governor in this country, the first out person in this country to be elected to be governor. She did make history in 2014, the first time when she was elected to be the state's attorney general. So this isn't necessarily the first time that she's been recognized as an out person. But nevertheless, the call was made right after the polls closed, and that was a pretty good development.
Wonderful. Well, yeah, thank you for that. And then also in Vermont, the ballot also made history. Would you talk a little bit about that?
So Becca Balint, she was the first LGBTQ representative elected in the state of Vermont. She is also the first woman to represent the state, if you can believe that. New England, you would think that it would be such a progressive place, but apparently not. She is the first out LGBTQ person to represent the people of Vermont in Congress. Excuse me.
Great. And, moving forward with more LGBTQ plus firsts and kind of big wins of the night in Colorado, incumbent Governor Jared Polis was the first out gay man reelected. Would you talk about the significance of that?
So Governor Polis was elected as the first gay individual to be governor. Actually, you know what? I have to correct something that I said earlier. In Massachusetts, the governor there, Maura Healey, she's the first lesbian to be governor. Jared Polis is, in fact, the first gay man to be governor. Anyhow, so he is being reelected for the first time. He made news the first time he was elected in 2016, and then now he was reelected last night pretty handily, and it was pretty much expected as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then we also have great news in Kansas. One of my favorites, actually, Sharice Davids, was reelected. And would you talk about the historical significance of that reelection?
So she is the only Democrat in the Kansas delegation and the first out woman to be representing the state of Kansas as well. She also happens to be the first Native American person to be represented in Congress, which is obviously well overdue. She became the first of two, along with Deb Haaland, who is now the Secretary of Interior, also a first for a Native American person.
Wonderful. And I think she's also the first MMA fighter in Congress, which is part of her background.
Yes.
And then also in California, we had a first with Robert Garcia. Would you talk a little bit about Robert Garcia's big win?
So Robert Garcia is the first gay immigrant in Congress, and he was elected. He was elected also pretty handily. It was not a surprise, but his race was very hard fought. I will note that also we're still waiting for some results from California, but Will Wallens is an Alex gay man who is in a long term partnership, who is representing a district that is now including Palm Springs. And he has a pretty good chance of taking that seat from Ken Calvert, who's held it for about 30 years.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for that. And also in Maryland, there was a first with Wes Moore becoming the first Black governor. And would you share a little bit about that important win?
Yeah, so Wes Moore, he has a really great story. In fact, he was endorsed by Oprah Winfrey and Barack Obama. A lot of really first class stars came out to endorse his governorship. He was the CEO of the Robin Hood Foundation, which makes it its goal to fight poverty and homelessness. He's also an author and a combat veteran. And he's specifically, when we had a conversation, promised me that part of his administration would be to put trans rights and LGBTQ rights at the forefront of everything he does, which includes expanding access to gender affirming care to Marylanders.
That's wonderful information. Thank you for that. Also, an anti-LGBTQ candidate was defeated by a former CIA agent in Virginia. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so that's Virginia's 7th district, which happens to be a district that's very close to where I live. This is the district where Abigail Spanberger, who was reelected against Yesley Vega, who was a Glenn Youngkin, who is the new Republican governor of Virginia. She's a Glenn Youngkin alkalite, and basically was also Trump endorsed. She ran on the platform that women could not get pregnant from abortion. She said a lot of really kind of crazy stuff. And it was kind of a nail biter. I have to say, the results took a while to come in. And as is always with Virginia, they happen to come in pretty quickly. But the big counties, the ones that really have a lot of Democratic representation, they always come a little later. So it becomes a bit of a challenge if you want to go to bed early around here.
Right. And I know you had a pretty late night last night. Um,
I did.
Also, some far right, pretty dangerous candidates secured office again. Would you talk a little bit about Ron DeSantis's win in Florida and former Trump press secretary Sarah Sanders in Arkansas?
Yeah, so sadly, Ron DeSantis won against Charlie Crist. You know, Ron DeSantis has been at the forefront of the attack on the LGBTQ community. He's the governor who signed the Don't Say Gay law in Florida. And he's just generally been not good to the LGBTQ community. And also someone who has not been very good to the American public in general is Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the former White House press secretary who told more than her fair share of alternative truths or alternative facts. Well, she has just been elected to be the governor of Arkansas, a position that her father, Mike Huckabee, held from 1996 until 2007.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that information, Christopher. And I just wanted to ask if there are any other races that you are continuing to eye at this point.
Well, right now there's one race that I'm really looking forward to finding out what the result is, and that is of Lauren Boebert. Lauren Boebert of Colorado has been one of the worst in Congress this Congress. She came in 2020, the election that Donald Trump lost, and she has been a firebrand, an attacker against the LGBTQ community. She has been propagating the false smear online that gay people and trans people are groomers. She's really been unapologetic and really incredibly horrible. Well, it turns out, surprisingly, something that no one expected, she's probably going to lose her race.
Great. Well, we do hope that happens. Christopher Wiggins, senior national reporter for The Advocate. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks again to Christopher for joining me. For more of the most up-to-date election coverage, visit advocate.com. In some of the races decided last night, the overturning of Roe v. Wade was a top issue driving votes. Abortion rights were on the ballot in 5 states. In at least 3 states, Michigan, California, and Vermont, abortion rights were protected. Kentucky rejected a measure that would further restrict abortion rights. The ballot measure in Montana, which calls for criminal penalties in abortion cases, is too close to call. Also on the ballot in 5 states, the legalization of recreational marijuana. Missouri and Maryland joined 21 other states with legalized marijuana laws. Arkansas, North Dakota, and South Dakota failed to pass their legal marijuana efforts. Medicinal marijuana is legal in 37 states. Inflation was a top concern for voters, according to CNN exit polls. Nearly a third of voters say inflation was the most pressing issue. Prices are at 40-year highs for food, gas, and other goods. That's despite the Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Law and student loan forgiveness plan. The exit polling found that 7 out of 10 voters are dissatisfied or angry with how things are going. The 2022 Out 100 list is here, featuring the year's most impactful LGBTQ changemakers in entertainment, fashion, politics, business, and beyond. See the full list of disruptors and groundbreakers on out.com. That's all the time we have for this Advocate today. For more news and coverage, download the Advocate channel. It's available on all streaming platforms. You can also find us on YouTube, along with more content from the Advocate channel brands. I'm Tracy E. Gilchrist. I'll see you next time.